My order came in just in time for Halloween. I don't think I'll be able to fit in watching all of them today, though. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. Happy Halloween! It's been a while since I last did a Blu-ray haul video, but the timing of the arrival of my Factory Shocktober sale order was too perfect to pass up. During October, Shout Factory puts many of their Scream Factory releases on sale, aka the horror and horror-adjacent films. I ended up waiting until the very last minute this year, placing my order only a few hours before the sale ended, mostly because I was having such a hard time narrowing down my list to a semi-reasonable number of movies. Despite a few blues selling out while I procrastinated, I'm pretty happy with the array of films I got. Most of these are actually blind buys, though I have seen a few of these films and pieces of a few more. Only a couple slipcovers in this order, so that was a little disappointing, but that's what I get for not buying these blues when they're first released. To make this easy to follow, I'm just going to go through these pickups in alphabetical order. If you're interested in getting any of these Scream Factory movies yourself, I do have affiliate links to almost all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. Alright, let's get into this haul. So first up, we've got Alligator. This is the 4K Collector's Edition. It's the only 4K I have of this batch, but definitely not the only Collector's Edition. The vast majority of these Scream Factory releases are. But this is one of the films that I have seen before. I actually quite enjoy this one. Came out in 1980. It was directed by Louis Teague, who kind of has a thing for directing these When Animals Attack natural horror films. He also did Cujo, the Stephen King film. But this one's basically, it's got a silly premise, right? It's about an alligator that was flushed down the toilet as a baby, who then kind of grows up and gets big and mutated in the sewers and wreaks havoc on a city. It's ridiculous, it's kind of silly, but it's got some good practical effects, and it's much more enjoyable than you would expect it to be, given the premise, given just the general vibe of these types of films usually, of these sort of When Animals Attack creature feature kind of things. Kind of surprised that they released this in 4K. In fact, it's the only edition. They don't even have just a regular Blu-ray, which is why I got the 4K in this case. I was considering getting Alligator 2. I didn't get Alligator 2. It was kind of expensive for the sale, and I don't like it as much as this one. Maybe eventually I'll get Alligator 2, but for now, just the first one will have to do. Next, we've got The Autopsy of Jane Doe. So this is one of the ones that's not a collector's edition, surprisingly. Again, the vast majority of these are. But this is a film that I've been curious about basically since it came out in 2016. So I haven't seen this one, but the premise always intrigued me. And that premise is basically right in the title, right? The Autopsy of Jane Doe. So we've got this unidentified woman dead coming into a coroner's office, and there are two coroners, played by Brian Cox and Emile Hirsch, who conduct the autopsy and are trying to kind of figure out the mystery of A, who she is, and B, what happened to her. And I don't know what that mystery is, right? I've very consciously avoided reading anything about this film. I just know it's supposed to be, I don't know, something. Something horror related, I imagine. But it always seemed interesting, and I'm glad I finally have a chance to check it out. Next up, we've got Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. So this one, another collector's edition. This came out in 2006, I believe. And it's basically sort of a pseudo-documentary horror comedy kind of thing. Basically, we've got this guy, Leslie Vernon, who is the next up-and-coming slasher, right, serial killer. So this is a world in which Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees and all of these horror movie slasher icons are real. And so this guy really looks up to them, wants to become the next one of them, basically. And so he invites like a documentary team to follow him around and sort of document his I don't know, training and his preparation for, I guess, committing these crimes and becoming the next slasher icon. And so it's kind of this funny horror film that deconstructs the genre and the tropes and kind of gets at some of the things that we at least slasher fans all enjoy about these movies, and kind of picks at them without outright making fun of them. So it's a fun one. It's a little silly and very specific, so not one that maybe non-genre fans would enjoy all that much, but it's a very creative look into this type of film. Next, we've got Class of 1984. So another collector's edition, another one without a slipcover. I'll get them eventually. So this came out in 1982, despite the name. And this one, I've never seen it. I've seen clips of it, but I've never seen it in its entirety. But basically, we've got a new teacher coming in to teach at this sort of like inner city high school that's overrun by violent students, and he kind of, I don't know, makes enemies almost with sort of the leader of the bad kids at this school. And so it's this really gritty, violent kind of, I don't know, action, but not action. It's just supposed to be a gritty, kind of sleazy, violent film. But it's always intrigued me because it sort of sounds like the opposite of some of those like inspirational teacher movies. You know, you've got a lot of films, especially in the 60s, about teachers coming into a school like this and like facing a lot of opposition from the students, but then like earning the students' respect and turning things around and making them want to learn. This seems like sort of a play on that, where it doesn't work out all nice in the end, where it's basically this teens versus teachers violent movie. So interesting. We'll see. Next up, we've got Death Becomes Her. So another collector's edition. This one is a sort of wild little horror comedy. Came out in 1992, directed by Robert Zemeckis. And this one features Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn as two women who are sort of vying for the attention and affection of Bruce Willis. And it's sort of an allegorical film about, or maybe metaphorical in this case, probably a little bit of both actually, but about youth and image and beauty, and we've got sort of this potion, I guess, if you will, that allows for rejuvenation. It's sort of like eternal youth, but maybe gets misused, or there's sort of a monkey's paw kind of price to be paid for using it. It's definitely a little silly, definitely a little violent at times, a little surprising at others, and certainly was a pretty big influence on The Substance, if anybody's seen that one this year. So I'm glad to finally have this one in my collection. Next up, we've got Dog Soldiers. It's a loose disc in there. Haven't opened it yet. Hopefully it's the DVD. So this one came out in 2002. It's directed by Neil Marshall. So I've never seen this one, but I've been aware of it. The poster, which is not the regular poster, this is like sort of the Shout Factory poster. The regular poster has been in my mind basically since I was like 12 years old when this came out, but haven't seen it. But I have seen The Descent, which the same director directed 3 years later. And I enjoyed The Descent. That one didn't have high hopes for it the first time I watched it, but it was a lot better than I was expecting and a lot, more unsettling and creepy. So I'm curious to see what this one's like. I know this is about a group of soldiers who go on like a training mission to the Scottish Highlands. But while they're there, they come across some some carnage that has occurred, and find themselves sort of face to face with a pack of werewolves. And it's these soldiers trying to survive the attacks from these werewolves. So this one always seemed like a fun kind of werewolf film. I've heard very good things about it. Again, haven't seen it, but very much looking forward to it. Next up, we've got Event Horizon. So, collector's edition and finally a slipcover. This one, they even have the slipcover wrapped in the plastic. So this one is a sci-fi sort of horror movie directed by Paul W.S. Anderson in 1997. So this is one that I have heard about a long time, and I think I might know a few too many things about it, despite not having seen the film. So I'm hoping that doesn't affect my enjoyment of the first watch. But this one, I'm curious to see how much it's able to separate itself from films like Alien. Anyway, basically we've got astronauts who are sent to salvage a ship that there's sort of a distress beacon coming from. The ship has been missing for quite a while, and they go out into space to figure things out and encounter some things that they probably don't expect to encounter. So this one's got Lawrence Fishburne and Sam Neill in it. Sam Neill is going to make an appearance in another film a little bit later on in this this haul video. But I'm looking forward to it. Again, this is one that I've kind of been aware of for a long time, but somehow just never got around to watching. And again, slipcover. Yes. Next up, we've got Eye of the Cat. So as you can see, no slipcover, but also not a collector's edition, which probably isn't all that surprising. I think the more surprising thing is this even has a Blu-ray release to begin with. So this one's definitely one of the riskier blind buys, I think, from the sale, but something about this one and the description just, I don't know, sounded fun, sounded a little silly, sounded like something I'd want to have. So this movie came out in 1969 by the director, or from the same director as Airport 79. But basically this one is about a guy who is terrified of cats, right? He has this phobia of cats, but he and his girlfriend decide to rob somebody's house, and that person has a lot of cats. And so there's already kind of, you know, some fear and tension there, at least for this guy, but it seems like this is going to be sort of like a natural horror when animals attack kind of thing, and that there's a lot of cat carnage going on, and these cats are like vicious and like attacking these people. I don't know. I really don't know what to expect. It could be terrible or it could be fun in that, you know, late 60s, early 70s natural horror style. I have a lot of movies like that already. There's a couple more in this haul as well. So we'll see. Cat attacks, I imagine. Next up, we've got Ginger Snaps, or Ginger Snaps, I think is probably the correct pronunciation, but I wouldn't know because I've never seen this one, actually. So, came out in 2000, so we've got another early 2000s werewolf movie that I haven't seen from this haul. I know a little bit about this one. Like I said, I know it's basically a werewolf movie. But in this film, we've got two sisters who are kind of weird. They're kind of the outcasts, but they're very close to one another. One of them gets attacked by a creature and starts to change and have some unique things happening with her. And it's dealing with that. So obviously a coming of age story. I assume an allegory for puberty related to werewolves, which is not the only one of those that's in this haul either. But again, never seen it. It's been on my list of films to check out for whatever, 24. Jeez, it's 2024 now, isn't it? So 24 years, but I will finally be able to watch it. Next up, we've got Idle Hands. So this is another one that's been on my radar for 25 years in this case, because this one came out in 1999. It's got Devon Sawa in it, so that's fun. He's always entertaining to see in horror movies from this kind of era. Collector's edition here. This one I, again, have never seen in its entirety, but I've seen clips of and was always kind of intrigued by. So it's kind of this over-the-top, goofy teen horror comedy. There's all sorts of wild stuff going on. There's zombies. There's all sorts of things. But the main thing is a disembodied, possessed hand that is kind of wreaking havoc and terrorizing people and doing all sorts of not great things, but comedically or comedic and entertaining things. I guess in sort of a teen comedy kind of way. And so it's about this teenager and his group of friends trying to stop his hand, from doing these things. So, possessed murderous hand, idle hands. We'll check it out. Next up, we've got In the Mouth of Madness. So this one's directed by John Carpenter in 1994. I told you I had another Sam Neill movie coming up. A little different from Event Horizon, I would imagine. Again, another film I've not actually seen. But this one is sort of this mystery investigation psychological film. Basically, there's an author whose book is quite literally driving people insane. And so an investigator is kind of put on the case, and he goes to the town and he's trying to find this author who's disappeared. And I don't know. I haven't seen it, right? So I don't know what else happens other than something, I imagine. From the cover art, it looks like there's going to be some craziness. And again, I do know that this has a large psychological element to it. And just from the name, In the Mouth of Madness, I imagine Sam Neill's character is probably going to be facing some psychological strain of some sort. And there's going to be something creepy going on. So psychological horror thriller is what I'm imagining out of this. But again, haven't seen it. First of a few John Carpenter films that are in this haul that I actually haven't seen. I'm surprised there were as many of his that I haven't watched as there are. But next up, we've got The Pack. So this movie came out in 1977. I have another movie called The Pack that came out in 2015. The Blu-ray's over there somewhere. But it's a different film. I was looking into it. It doesn't seem like that one's a remake. It's just another movie with the same exact name that also has to do with canines. But basically, we've got another When Animals Attack natural horror film here. Essentially, there's this island that's like a big vacation spot, vacation destination, and there is this group of dogs, a pack of dogs that have been abandoned, or has grown over the years, have been abandoned by people on vacation. And so these dogs band together and decide to terrorize the residents of this island. So I don't know. I tend to, these movies are never like good, but they're enjoyable and I tend to like them. I also tend to root for the animals, so I imagine I will be on the dog side here. Just from the sort of name, right, and the premise, it reminds me of a movie called Dogs, which I have somewhere really close here. Oh, right there. Just out of frame. That one came out in 1976, the year before this one, so I'm curious to see how much or if there's any influence from that film on this one. But I mean, it's a killer dog movie, so I don't know how much, differentiation there's going to be, but we'll see. Next, we've got Prince of Darkness. So here's another John Carpenter film. This is one I've seen pieces of. I've never seen it all the way through in its entirety, but I have seen pieces of this one. Another Donald Pleasance John Carpenter movie. This one came out in 1987 and is about like a group of grad students and researchers who come across this sort of sealed, mysterious canister while they're in a church. And as is often the case in horror movies about evil things, these people decide to open the canister. And when they do, this this essence, this liquid, this, I don't know exactly what it is, some embodiment of evil escapes from this canister and starts to kind of infect people in a way, I guess is probably the best way I can describe it, especially not having seen it in its entirety. And these people, their mission now becomes to try to stop this evil before it takes over the world, I assume, at least this town, but I imagine it probably would spread a little bit further. So always been one that I've been curious about and interested in seeing in its entirety, given the fact that I've seen bits of it, but now I finally get a chance to. So next up we've got Q, or Q the Winged Serpent, on this cover. I've never seen it with the additional title before, but so I don't know if that's official or if it is just Q. This one came out in 1982, directed by the same guy who did movies like The Stuff and the It's Alive trilogy, so I think that gives me kind of an idea of what to expect, at least in terms of tone and maybe some of the effects. But this one seems like it's basically kind of like a kaiju film. So we've got this big dragon thing that comes to New York City. I think it's actually supposed to be like an Aztec dragon god or something, but it sort of roosts in the Chrysler building. And there are people who have to try to figure out what to do with it because it's there and it's like killing people and doing things. So this is one that I have been aware of, never even seen clips of it, but I've been aware of it because of the poster, the art, and then just the name, right? Just the fact that it's called Q. There's not a ton of Q movies out there. I mean, I have a handful of them, now one more, but there's not a lot of them, so it always kind of stuck in my mind. And this one, you're probably like, well, why did you get it then, right? It's not a collector's edition, like you've never seen it, it's kind of a weirdo one. So this was really cheap compared to even the discounted other films in this sale. So this was only like $7.99, and I was like, oh, at that price, like, get another Q movie, it's worth it. So next up, we've got Sleepwalkers. So this is a Stephen King movie, came out in 1992, has a slipcover, and so this one was directed by Mick Garris, who, interestingly and weirdly enough, was the writer of Hocus Pocus. A little bit different in terms of movie, but came out near the same time. Right, this one's 92, Hocus Pocus was 93. But this one is a sort of wild, shape-shifting werewolf movie. I know there's a lot of cats involved. I've seen a bit of this, probably about half of it, but it was a long time ago, so I can't remember if it's were-cats or if cats are just like drawn to them or they do something to the cats. I can't remember. I just know there's cats involved. But like I said, this is one that I've seen a bit of. I was young, not like little kid, but young enough that, you know, you couldn't access the TV guide on the TV, like you got it in the mail. So I remember this was one that just randomly, you know, flipping through channels late at night, I came across and was kind of, I don't know, intrigued by and grabbed by, and I sat there and watched about half the movie, but I had no clue what it was, until the next day when I pulled out the TV guide, the book, or the magazine or whatever it was, whatever you want to consider it. And I was flipping through the TV guide, trying to even remember what channel I was on and what time it was to figure out what the heck I had been watching. And it was Sleepwalkers. So that was a long time ago, you know, probably 25 years or so. And so I'm looking forward to finally watching it in its entirety. It is a 90s Stephen King movie, so I can't imagine it's all that great. But I'm glad I have it because it's Stephen King, and I try to get all of his movies. And again, slipcover, which makes it all the better. Speaking of slipcovers, we've got another one here, and the last slipcover, unfortunately, for Teen Wolf. So this is a 1985 movie starring Michael J. Fox, and is not called Back to the Future. But this is one that, amazingly, I have never seen in its entirety. It's one that I don't know how I've managed it. I've seen clips of it, I've seen chunks of it, I've seen maybe almost the whole movie just out of order, but I've never sat down and watched it, you know, front to back. So now I finally get a chance to. But this is like a coming-of-age sort of horror light comedy. And so Michael J. Fox, he turns into a werewolf, right? So he's this kind of like unpopular kid at school, but once he becomes a werewolf, he's, somehow cool. And so he becomes popular, but how does that impact him? Does it change who he is? He's on the basketball team, and they, for some reason, don't have a rule against werewolves playing basketball. And so he's really good at basketball, and he can jump all crazy. And I don't know, it's a goofy movie. It's the pieces I've seen, I don't remember it being an amazing movie, but I'm looking forward to finally watching it all the way through. And again, slipcover. Keeping in line with our coming-of-age werewolf movies, we have Teen Wolf 2. So this came out a couple years later, 1987, and it's a sequel, but it's one of those sequels where they didn't really get the main people back. And so in this case, we've got Scott, the main character from the last movie, his cousin, who also is afflicted by this werewolf thing. So this one's set in college, but it's basically a rehash. It's this cousin becomes a werewolf, and he becomes, big man on campus, or big wolf on campus, or whatever. And instead of basketball, he's a boxer, and it's the same type of thing. No Michael J. Fox, but instead, the werewolf here is Jason Bateman. So this one I've never actually seen. I've never seen any bit of it. I've never seen a single clip from this one. I imagine it's not very good, but it was another one that was on the cheap side. I'm like, if I'm getting Teen Wolf, I gotta get Teen Wolf 2 as well. Next up, we've got They Live. So of all of the movies in this haul, this is the one that I'm most ashamed of having not seen. So again, I've been very acutely aware of this film, and I've wanted to see it for a very long time, and for some reason just kind of never got around to it, never bought the Blu-ray, never caught it on TV. It's funny, I did see that it was on TCM a few days ago, but I already had ordered this, and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to watch it on TCM and then rewatch it in a couple days or a couple weeks after, so I restrained myself from watching it or recording it, because I knew I was going to have the Blu-ray. But we've got a collector's edition Blu-ray, another John Carpenter film, again, third one of the haul, third one that I haven't seen, somehow, of his. I thought I had seen most of them. I've seen like 7 or 8 of his movies, but there's a few more that I have, even beyond the 3 here. But basically, this is a creative take on an alien invasion movie. There are these aliens that have kind of become part of the community, and they kind of take the place of people, or they pretend to be people, something along those lines. So they blend in, and nobody can tell. Nobody knows that they're these aliens who are here kind of planning to take over the world, take over humanity. But there's this special pair of sunglasses that when our main character puts them on, he can see the aliens underneath, and they're these weirdo, skeleton face things. And so it's this guy trying to save the world, right? Trying to prevent this alien invasion, this alien takeover from happening. Always sounded intriguing to me, always looked fun, and the main poster, again, not the poster that's on the cover art here, but the main poster of looking down over the sunglasses, I remember seeing that at Hollywood Video and Blockbuster when I was a kid, and so it's been one that I've always been intrigued by and interested in, so finally have it, hopefully gonna watch it very soon. Next up, we've got Trick or Treat. So this is one that I have seen. So I know we've gone through so many that I haven't, but we've got another one that I have seen. Came out in 2007, and it's actually a horror anthology film, which I tend to not really enjoy. I'm not a big anthology film person. I don't mind them if the individual stories connect, which is what happens in this one, which is why I think I do enjoy this film. But usually I don't like them. So this was a movie that, even though I had been aware of it for a long time, I put off watching way too long. I didn't watch this until last year, right around Halloween. I think it was a day or two before Halloween. So it's been about a year since I've seen this. I've only seen it the one time, but was very pleasantly surprised by it, right? I had heard good things about it from everybody I talked to, but I was like, ugh, an anthology. But so if you don't like anthologies, this one maybe would be good for you. At least if you like interconnected or slightly interconnected stories. But this one's got basically 4 stories that happen, and the character tying them together, Sam here. And so it's kind of this, it was unexpected. I didn't think it was going to be as funny as it was. Like, it's definitely a horror comedy, but it's got some really dark stuff in it. Some of it's creepy, some of it's funny, some of it's kind of gross at times. But it's, I don't know, it's a fun one, a good one for Halloween, so I'll probably end up throwing this one on at some point today before my annual Halloween watches later tonight. But glad that I have it. Sad that I don't have a slipcover, but I will rectify that at some point. Alright, so that was my 2024 Shout Factory Shocktober Blu-ray haul. So, did you get any Blu-rays during this Shocktober sale? Seen any of the movies I got? Let me know your thoughts and all of your pickups in the comments below. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insider information out of this haul video, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this, as well as movie reviews. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainely Movies, the way life should be.